The bottle fell before I understood what was happening. A quick movement among the leaves, a dry snap, and suddenly the water spread across the hot ground, flowing between stones and roots. I moved forward without thinking, barking loudly, with my entire body on alert. The monkey ran with the bottle in its hands. It jumped to a higher trunk, looked back for a second, that quick, clever look, and disappeared among the branches. I stood there, panting, smelling the water mixed with hot earth and crushed leaves. The sun beat down too hard for that hour. "Joca!" Daniel called behind me. I didn't turn. The trail was silent now, but not in a good way. A tight silence, full of things moving without appearing. That walk had passed its limit a long time ago, and I only realized it when the water was gone. Daniel approached, breathing heavily. He passed his hand over his face, looked around, then at me. "Calm down, we'll figure out." But I wasn't calm. The path seemed different. Narrower, longer, and I didn't like the idea of moving forward without knowing where it ended. Earlier that day, everything had started in a very different way. The doorbell rang in odd time. It wasn't too early, but it wasn't visiting time either. I was still lying near the kitchen door when I raised my head, alert. The sound was firm, familiar. Anna arrived first, wiping her hands on the dish towel. She opened the door and stood still for a moment. The smell entered before the voice. Sweet, warm, familiar. "Cake. Good morning," he said, smiling. It was Daniel. He entered holding a simple box, with too much care for someone who said he was just passing through. He was thinner than last time, but there was something different in the way he moved. No rush, no rigidity in his shoulders. He hugged Anna tightly. Carlos appeared soon after, coming from the hallway, adjusting the chair before sitting, in a slow, economical movement. "I'm off today," Daniel said. "I brought a cake from the pizzeria." He placed the box on the table and opened it. The smell spread through the house. Anna smiled in that rare, complete way. Carlos pulled up the chair and settled in silence. I watched from a distance. Daniel leaned down and passed his hand over my neck. The hand was firm, warm. There wasn't that strange smell from other times. He laughed. "You still sleep in this same corner." Coffee happened without haste. Cups, plates, cake cut into large pieces. Daniel talked about his work as a courier, the long streets, the deliveries under the strong sun. He said he was tired, but seemed satisfied. Carlos listened more than he spoke. Anna asked everything. The atmosphere was light, but attentive, like when the weather clears after the rain, and no one is sure if it has gone for good. At some point, Daniel went to the window. He looked at the backyard, and then beyond the wall. "There's a park near here, right?" he said. "A trail." Anna frowned. Carlos commented something about the heat. Daniel smiled, calm, as if that decision had already been made for some time. "I'll go slow." He looked at me. "Take the dog with me?" I raised my head immediately. That wasn't part of my routine. I went out little. Short walks. Always nearby. I looked at Anna. She hesitated. Carlos remained silent. Daniel had already taken a water bottle and put the backpack on his back. He knelt and called my name softly. It wasn't an order. It was an invitation. We left. Now, there on the trail, without the water, with the sun burning the ground and the tall grass closing the path, I realized too late that this return was not simple. Daniel called me again. The path began to descend without warning. It wasn't a clear trail, one of those that someone cleans or marks. It was just packed earth, leaves stuck together, and loose stones still dark from the previous night's rain. The wet earth denounced danger even before showing where it was. It always deceives. Daniel went ahead. Steps too fast for someone who said he was out of shape. I came right behind, attentive to the sound of his foot slipping slightly, trying to correct himself with every step. The sun beat down hard there, without shadow. The air seemed still, too heavy to pull into the chest. My tongue was already hanging out, thick, tired. He stopped for a moment, rested his hands on his knees, and breathed deeply. When he looked back, his eyes were narrower, as if calculating something. "Are you tired, Joca?" I wagged my tail without conviction. It wasn't just tiredness. It was strangeness. That ground did not please me. There was something wrong in the way it gave way under my paws. We followed for a few more meters. The descent became steeper, the path narrower, and Daniel tried to slow the pace, but his body seemed not to obey as before. His foot slipped once. Then again, the movement became less secure, more contained, as if he were talking in silence with his own body as he walked. It was fast. The ground gave way for good under his weight. There was no time for warning. His body went forward, clumsy, and his face met the ground with a dry, muffled sound. Daniel fell face first, his arms trying to hold on to something that didn't exist. I lunged forward, barking loudly. I circled, sniffed the air, the ground him. There was the smell of earth, sweat, and a thin trail of blood mixed with mud. Little, but enough to make me alert. Daniel groaned softly. He tried to get up and fell back to his knees. "Damn," he murmured. He passed his hand over his face and pulled something small from the mud. A lens, crooked, dirty. "Great. I lost the other one," he said, breathing heavily. He tried to smile, but didn't convince even himself. He stood up slowly, offloading more weight on one leg. He took 2 steps and stopped, closing his eyes for an instant. The smell changed. It wasn't just effort. It was contained pain. "I think I hit my leg." He spoke lower. "It's been a long time since I walked like this. I need to go back to the gym." He sat on a rock with exaggerated caution. He cleaned the lens on his shirt, tried to put it back on, and gave up. He stayed looking at the ground, thoughtful, as if the silence helped to organize things. I approached and stood still in front of him. He reached out and gave a quick pat on my head. "We're going back," he said. "It's not worth forcing it." That's when I felt it first. A different smell, strong, marked. I stopped immediately. My body hardened even before I understood. The hairs on my neck stood up on their own. A sound came right after, leaves being pushed, steps too firm to be human. I raised my head and saw the movement ahead. A dog emerged from the brush, advancing slowly, directly, without deviating. Tail high, body tense. That wasn't curiosity. It was a warning. I placed myself in front of Daniel without thinking. The bark came out thick, loud, echoing through the trail. I took 2 firm steps forward. The other dog responded with a short growl and advanced a bit more. Daniel tried to get up too fast and groaned in pain. He stayed still behind me. I advanced again, occupying space, barking louder. The other dog stopped. He looked at me, then back. That's when I noticed the cabin, almost hidden among the trees. A man appeared at the door and called loudly. The dog hesitated, growled one last time, and retreated, still watching us, until he disappeared back into the brush. The silence returned slowly, as if it had been pulled back into place. Daniel released the air he was holding. "Good boy," he said, passing his hand over my neck. We didn't stay there any longer. We turned immediately. We walked in silence for a time I cannot measure. Sometimes I went ahead, then returned close to him. Other times I stayed glued, following the slower pace. He stopped every now and then, breathed deeply, rested his hands on his knees, and followed. We returned together, thirsty, exhausted, and attentive, because that walk had already given too many signs that it was not a common day. We returned from the trail slower than we had left. Daniel limped slightly, but enough to change the rhythm. He didn't complain. He just breathed deeper, stopping every now and then, as if he were listening to his own body ask for something that he pretended not to hear. When the gate opened, the smell of the house came first. Food, shade, familiar things. Anna appeared quickly, surprised to see us back so soon. She looked at Daniel from head to toe before even asking anything. "Are you back already?" Daniel smiled, in that short way, like someone who doesn't want to explain too much. The sun hit hard. Carlos appeared soon after, coming from the living room, with his usual careful step. He observed in silence, leaning against the wall for a moment before approaching. No one asked for details. I lay down near the door, feeling the cold floor relieve my tired body a bit. Anna went to the kitchen almost at the same time. She said she was going to make something simple, nothing elaborate. She opened the fridge, separated things. The sound of cutlery and the pot brought a strange sense of normalcy, as if that morning were still intact, despite everything that had happened outside of there. Daniel sat at the table, leaning forward, arms over his knees, looking at nothing. Sometimes he raised his gaze, but didn't seem to see anything in particular. I approached and touched my nose to his leg. The smell was different, something too dry, muffled. He patted my head quickly. "Calm down, Joca." The lunch was quiet. Anna spoke little but moved all the time. Carlos ate slowly, looking at his plate. Daniel ate well, but without haste, as if he were measuring every movement. At one point, Anna got up. "I'm gonna buy some vegetables," she said. I went with her to the gate. It was a quick walk. We walked a few blocks. Anna didn't say anything, but she squeezed the purse strap too hard. When we returned, a few minutes later, Daniel was still sitting at the table, now looking at his phone, which was turned off and face down. The lunch ended without comments. Dishes were taken to the sink. Carlos got up first, went to the living room. Anna began to wash the dishes, the sound of the water filling the space that no one occupied with words. It was then that Daniel stood up slowly. "I'm going to the bathroom," he announced, almost like a request for leave. He walked down the hallway with care, closed the door behind him. The sound of the flush came some time later. Running water, a time that was too long. Silence again. I waited. When the door opened, I raised my head immediately. Daniel returned to the living room with the same step, but the smell was no longer the same. It wasn't sweat. It wasn't food. It was not the house. It was something more enclosed, deeper, as if it had become trapped in him. My body reacted before I did. My tail stopped mid-motion. My ears became tense. I approached slowly, sniffing the air around him, trying to understand. Daniel noticed. "What is it, boy?" I didn't answer. I didn't know how. He stood still for an instant, uncomfortable, then sat on the sofa. He passed his hand over his face, as if trying to recompose himself. The smell was still there. I only knew that something had changed inside that house that still looked the same on the outside. Daniel didn't stay long after that. He sat on the sofa for only a few minutes, talked little, and answered mostly with short sentences, as if he were saving words. The strange smell remained there, discreet, clinging to him, mixed with the air of the house, like something that didn't want to be noticed but wouldn't go away either. I didn't detach myself. I stayed close the whole time, attentive to every movement. When he changed positions on the sofa, I adjusted my body with him. When he crossed his legs or leaned forward, I raised my head. Even standing still, his body seemed restless, as if he hadn't found the right place to rest. Anna watched from a distance, pretending to organize the kitchen. She moved small objects from one side to the other, opening and closing cabinets unnecessarily. Carlos remained seated in the armchair, the television on without volume. The remote rested loosely in his hand, forgotten. No one seemed truly occupied with what they were doing. When Daniel stood up, it was too fast to be natural, as if he had made a decision even before announcing it. "I'm going," he said, already reaching for his backpack. Anna turned immediately, surprised. "Are you sure? Do you want more coffee?" He shook his head, sketching a short, unsteady smile. "Better not." He put the backpack on his back, checked his pockets without looking properly, and ran his hand through his hair in an automatic gesture. Then he knelt near me and pressed his forehead against mine for a second. It was too fast for a goodbye, too long to be just a pet. Take care of them, okay? The smell changed again when he stood up. I stood still, watching as he crossed the living room and went to the door. The gate closed shortly after with a dry snap. There was no wave of the hand. There was no promise of return. We stayed there, the three of us, listening to the silence settle inside the house. Anna was the first to speak, still with her back turned, moving something in the sink. He was strange. Carlos breathed deeply before answering. He was. The afternoon dragged on. Anna went to the bedroom to make the bed, folding the sheets with exaggerated care. Carlos stayed in the living room, changing television channels without really watching anything. I walked through the house, sniffing familiar corners. I entered the bedroom when Anna suddenly stopped before the dresser, one of the drawers open. She stood for a few seconds looking inside, without moving, as if she expected something to appear on its own. Carlos. The voice came out low. There was no shock. There was a realization. He came slowly, his hand resting on the wall, his body following in a cautious rhythm. He looked at the drawer, then at the back of it. The bills were not there. Not all of them. There was money here, Anna said, almost in a whisper. Carlos closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he didn't answer immediately. He closed the drawer carefully, as if that gesture could reorganize something. Maybe we moved it, he said, without conviction. Anna didn't answer. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on some point on the floor. I approached slowly and touched my nose to her leg. The smell now was of contained sadness, the kind that makes no noise but occupies space. Nobody accused anyone, but nobody ignored it. The rest of the day happened on autopilot. Dinner was simple. Few words. Cutlery touching plates with too much care. The house seemed the same, but occupied by something invisible, heavy, that chose no specific place. When the lights were turned off, I went to my usual corner. Anna and Carlos went to the bedroom earlier than usual. The hallway went dark. The refrigerator turned on and off. The clock marked the time too loudly. The silence of that night was not rest. It was a vigil. The wind arrived before the rain. First week, almost distracted, moving the leaves in the backyard like someone testing the space. I raised my head immediately. The smell changed fast. Charged electric air, the kind that makes the body prepare itself without knowing for what. Anna was in the kitchen. Carlos was in the living room. Neither of them said anything when the first thunder sounded far away, low, more like a warning than a threat. The sky darkened too early, swallowing the end of the afternoon. The wind returned stronger. The back door slammed once. Carlos got up carefully to close it. Anna turned off the kitchen light, even before she needed to. Small gestures, extra cares. I walked through the house, restless. I stopped near the window. The backyard seemed smaller with a heavy sky above it. The first drop fell thick, isolated. Then another. In a few seconds, the rain came in full, hitting the roof with force, as if it were in a hurry. The next thunder was closer. The ground vibrated lightly under my paws. Automatic retreat. I went near Anna and leaned my body against her leg. She passed her hand over my head, but didn't say anything. Her hand stayed there longer than usual. The light flickered once. Twice. Carlos looked at the ceiling. The third thunder came along with the dark. Everything went out at once. The silence that followed was strange. Just the rain. Heavy. Constant. It will be back in a moment, Carlos said, more to fill the dark than out of certainty. His voice sounded different without the light. He lit the candle that was kept in the cupboard. The wick took a moment to catch, but soon the small flame began to draw large shadows on the walls. The house seemed different this way, reduced to that circle of weak light. Closed doors, locked windows, another thunder, louder, closer. My body reacted before my head. I gave a short jump, barked once by accident. Anna called me softly and pulled me closer. I sat beside her. Carlos stood, attentive, as if he expected something to give way. The rain lasted longer than expected. The wind made the roof creak. Something small fell in the backyard with a dry sound. Anna held her breath. Carlos tried to use a cell phone flashlight, but the screen didn't light up. No signal, no light. We stayed there, the three of us, together because there was nowhere else to go. When the noise began to decrease, it wasn't all at once. The rain thinned. The wind grew tired. The thunder moved away gradually, like an animal leaving after marking territory. The light returned without warning. Everything lit up suddenly. The candle lost its purpose. Anna blew out the wick carefully. Carlos went to the window and opened it just a bit, checking the backyard. The air came in humid, fresher, clearing the heat of the day, but not taking everything away. The house seemed in order. Nothing broken, nothing out of place. Even so, nobody truly relaxed. When we lay down, the tired body gave way first. The mind did not follow. The house made noises that were too normal for that hour. Each creak seemed new. Each silence seemed full. With eyes closed, I stayed attentive. Because after that day, resting no longer meant being safe.